everyone, I'm Callie.
I'm Lauren.
And welcome to the Book Common Room podcast. Welcome guys to our bonus episode for December. We kind of decided we really wanted to give a Christmas Carol. I don't know if you've seen the Cynthia Erivo meme right now, where it's holding space.
Oh, yes.
We wanted to hold space for a Christmas Carol.
Yes.
But we also really wanted to talk about our reading year, our goals we had, what we, like some of our favorite things we read. And then we also want to talk about the podcast a little bit.
Yes.
And goals we have for the podcast, but then also open it up back to you guys if you guys have anything you want us to read in the new year. So we're just doing this bonus episode. I'm not quite sure how long it'll be. We like to yap, so...
Yeah, we usually yap for 40 minutes to an hour, but this one could be shorter or about that time, depending on, like... I don't know. We kind of just want to reflect on the podcast itself, our relationship with, like, our audience, and, repurpose how we're doing this. Like, I guess, refocus on, like, the purpose of this.
We've made it...
This is going to be the 15th episode? Wait. Yeah, this is the 15th episode.
That's crazy. So, that's what, like, 7 months?
Yeah. We've been doing this since June.
So, I mean, it's still a little rough. Our lighting... we're still renting from our school.
Yeah. We're renting equipment from our school.
So there's still things that aren't like totally perfect and well fleshed out. But we've learned.
Yeah.
And we've kind of figured out what we want for the podcast. And now we just want to reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But more, we want to really just open up to you guys. Really, we want to see what you guys want more out of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And not just us sitting here and yapping about books we've read.
Yeah. Like we have, like, I feel like we have a vision. We have a lot of plans of things we want to do, things we want to make it look like. We're definitely probably going to have some rebranding in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, we started this right before we hit our, like, senior year of college. Mm-hmm. And so we've been kind of in survival mode. But also, like, part of it was, like, we wanted to do this and either we wait forever or we just start and then learn as we go.
Yeah. But we've been having a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Like, some of my favorite memories have become Lauren and her husband have moved. I don't know if this looks different. This probably looks the exact same.
The wall doesn't look yellow.
That's true.
If you notice, there's this and no desk in the background. Yeah.
We're just in we're in a larger space. Lauren and her husband are very gracious letting us film here. But it might look a little different. We want to revamp what's going on and
Yeah, because first and foremost, like, these book clubs are conversations. We're like, and also, like, I don't know, I've just realized going through my experience of the English program is that, like, most people, I don't know, like, we all find our own ways of entertainment. Like, a lot of people, like, this is really dumb, but, like, some people just, like, are outdoors people all the time.
Yeah.
So, like, and sometimes they'll, like, read, but it's, like, I've found that if I talk to someone who doesn't read or, like, I don't know, I have a hard time talking to them sometimes about stuff because I'm like, I don't really know how to relate to you, but I do feel like reading is such a good way to connect with people in whatever way that is. So, like, I don't know, everyone has their own tastes, own love for literature, and so I feel like with this podcast we just want to make it a conversation but also, like, an opportunity to be like, hey, these are things that might enhance the way you read this book.
Yeah. Awesome. So do you want to start with our reads first or the podcast stuff first?
Ooh, let's do, like, our favorite reads. Like, okay. I think that would be fun.
I think we should do, like, our top 3 favorite reads and then our one least favorite read.
Okay. Let me go into the archives here because I'm not going to remember all these books off the top of my head.
I am obsessed with Goodreads, so I'm just going to pull my Goodreads page.
Like, in general, not with the podcast, like what we read.
No, just in general.
Just books in general.
Just, like, 2024.
The
whole year.
Okay.
Top 3 favorite reads and then your number 1 least favorite read.
Number 1 least favorite, top 3 favorites. Okay, got it. You should start us off.
Okay, so I'll start. We'll do positive, negative, positive.
Okay.
Does that work? So we'll do top 2 reads and then 1 least favorite. I'm changing it.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes. That's fine.
We're doing this on the fly.
Because I was, like, trying to think of books I read because I don't use Goodreads because I don't really like Goodreads. And And I have like a journal, but I haven't kept up with that journal for like a year, so I'm super behind.
That's true. Goodreads isn't my favorite either, but it's really easy to just keep track of things.
Yeah.
So, and you just hit, I've read this.
I need to go through, and I want to go through all the books I've ever read in my whole life, and then go from there. I have after we graduate, I have so much like archiving, organization stuff I have to be going through. But you go for it, girl.
Okay, so if you guys want to follow me on Goodreads, go for it. Callie Austin is just my name. I don't think I have any special username. But my original goal this year is I wanted to read 50 books. I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm at 45 books right now. So who knows? Maybe I can read 5 books really sneakily before the end of the year. But probably my favorite book, this was the year I finished Robin Hobb's massive Farseer series, 16 books. So that's probably the top, is I finished that whole series this year.
And she reread them.
Okay, here's the thing. I finished them, so I read... the last book is Assassin's Fate, so I'm just going to say that book. I'll just have one Robin Hobb book on there. Amazing. Love the ending. And then I went to a massive reading slump. Read all of the Harry Potter books.
Oh, we did
try to get out of it.
Well, we also needed to read them for the podcast, too.
True,
when we got there.
But I also kind of just wanted to get out of it.
Them.
And then I read Sarah J. Maas. Anyway, so I'm going to say my number one favorite is probably Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. It was just so good. It was the perfect ending to this massive series. You're with this character Fitz for, I think it's like, how many years is it? I think it's like 30 or 40 years you're with him. Wow. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time. And I just loved it. It was my favorite. And then, I don't know, I think my least favorite this year was probably A Court of Thorns and Roses.
That's okay. Yeah, she gave it a whole spanking 2 stars.
I did.
On Goodreads.
I'm looking back. I had some mid books this year, but I think that was my least favorite book.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing about our friendship was I had to learn to be okay. I was worried that this was going to happen too. I was like, I don't know if Callie's going to like this. Only because, like, I think you went into with too high of expectations. Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
But that's okay. Like, we all do that. And so I was worried about that, but I loved it so much. I gobbled up that.
You know what? That's awesome.
So, yeah. Okay. So those were the books.
Yeah, those are the books. And I think other 2 that I really loved that I read this year, Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. I really loved that book. Yep. And then Blood Over Bright Haven I read in January. Emma Wong. That's Emma Wong's other book.
Oh, right.
Through Sword of Kaigen. I mean, I also read Sword of Kaigen this year, but I won't count that towards anything because that's just a favorite. But yeah, cool. I think my top were Robin Hobb, Blood Over Bright Haven, and then A Room of One's Own. Least favorite, Court of Thorns and Roses. Sorry.
See, okay. No, don't be sorry. My problem is, because I don't track them, I don't remember anything. So I'm like, I know I read a heck ton of books this year just because of like school and so I'm like trying to think, but I think one of my favorites is going to be A Christmas Carol.
Love it.
I loved that.
It was so
like
good.
It was a novella, so I guess it's not a book. So I really enjoyed that. And I'm trying to think like what other new books I read this year that I really liked. There were a few in my classes that I really enjoyed that I was like, oh, like I love this, but I can't remember like any of them.
I'll keep talking while you keep thinking.
Yeah.
So fine. Another goal that I had at the beginning of the year that we talked about in our first episode, I really wanted to read Dune.
Oh,
I read Dune this year. So that's just another like goal that I had for this year in reading. I wanted to read Dune. And did it live up to the expectations? Not really. I liked it. I think it's still worth it. I want to read at least the second one. I didn't love Frank Herbert's writing as much. I mean, a lot of the same things I complain about with Sarah J. Maas. I feel like he told and didn't show.
Which I didn't feel that much in Avatar for some reason.
It bugged me.
Interesting.
It was very glaring.
Yeah.
But Dune did that a lot. I thought the first half was really, really compelling. And then the second half just was a little like, I don't know, lackluster. The movie was so epic. And the book just wasn't.
Okay.
So I think that was... But the world's amazing. Like, that's why I keep reading it. Because the world is so cool. And the characters are so interesting. But, like, plot-wise,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's another goal I achieved this year.
Okay. You guys, I'm really struggling here. What book did I not like? What book did I not like this year that I was like, no? I read a book called The Burning of Bridget Cleary.
Okay.
I did not like that one.
I don't know what it is.
It was like, so I have like this folklore class, and it's this book that's kind of like probably the last witch. It was like Bridget Cleary was probably like the last witch burning of Ireland. And it wasn't even like people burned her. It was her husband, and they thought she was a changeling, which is like a whole thing. And this lore was that there's like changelings, which are like fairies in the other realm, are stuck between like heaven and hell. It was like when the earth was being formed, and they got stuck here somehow. And so they call them like, they have like things in Ireland that they call like fairy places, where like the veil is thin for like between like the fairy world and the human world. They're like fairy rings or something like that. And so Bridget Cleary was accused of being a changeling. Like they thought like the fairy possessed her body, while she, the real Bridget Cleary, was abducted by the fairies. And so they were like trying to do things to bring her back, and some of the things they do is kill them.
Ooh.
Or which isn't true, because like in the actual like stories, what they do is they have to appeal to the fairies to bring them back. And so honestly, like it was a whole like court hearing where they were saying like the husband did end up going to jail, because they were just like, you're using this as like a cover, when you just
like an
really
excuse.
were like, because there was speculation that she was cheating on him. She was also like very wealthy on her own. She could like sew, and like she was like a dressmaker, so she was pretty independent.
He was jealous,
and he was kind of like gaining from like her. And so and so there was all of that going on. But I read that, and the reason I don't like it is because it was so like they were trying to like tell this story, but it was like out of chronological order in the years. So I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But it was very interesting story. Like it was like it was just like the burning of Bridget Cleary, and like that whole like was it because they actually believed in fairies? Was it something else? Them kind of breaking it down. So that was cool, especially because I feel like I've become more like folky. Like I really like folklore and like myths and fairy tales, and so it was very interesting to read that. But I think it was my least favorite because of how they wrote it. Like I feel like they could have told it in a better way. But yeah, I do think A Christmas Carol is one of my favorites, and then like one of the other books I read this year is ACOTAR. And I loved it. So it was your least favorite, my freaking favorite. Like A Christmas Carol and ACOTAR, like I read that whole series. I will say the 5th book took me like 3 months to read, because I just didn't love the POV. And then I learned to love it, but I don't know. There was just...
It wasn't the same.
And I thought that I loved like the first 2 books, and then the 3rd one was like all plot stuff. And then they had like a novella in there, which isn't important. And then the 5th book that people were struggling with. I wasn't the only one. Some people loved it. So if people didn't like the main character, Feyre, they usually liked that book. So you could actually like the 5th one.
It's Nesta, right?
Because it's her sister. And her sister views people very differently, which people liked because it was refreshing. But she also was like, I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, so.
She was, I mean, in ACOTAR and A Court of Mist and Fury, she was annoying, but...
She was fine, but she went through something crazy, and the 5th book is like her grappling with it, but the way she grapples with it really bothered me, because I just wouldn't have done it the way she had done it, which, like, it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of
a fairy.
Like a fantasy story. So anyways, like, or like a fairy story or whatever, but anyways, that was my favorite. I loved it. I think it was because I had gone through a reading slump, and that's what got me out of it.
No,
and I had no expectations of it, so it was better than I thought it was going to be. That's how it went with me.
You know,
opposite
I think
for
that's
her.
awesome.
And that's fine. And just so you know, you can still be friends with people that don't like ACOTAR. Like, I love it, and she hates it. So it's okay.
It's okay. We just don't talk about it.
We just don't talk about it. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. That's really sad.
I know. It's okay. But looking back at my list, I had a really good reading year. I read, like, Faulkner, Toni Morrison.
Faulkner's great.
I read a lot of really good classics.
You read Frankenstein for the first time?
Frankenstein for the first time. This is the year I, like, actually got into Shakespeare. I hadn't really, like, understood the hype around Shakespeare.
You know more about him than I do.
Well, the Shakespeare class I'm taking,
I took a
like, got
Hemingway
obsessed.
class. Yeah. There was Shakespeare. So in our like courses at the university, they had like an Austen class, a Hemingway class, and a Shakespeare class. Those are like,
dang. See, I only had Chaucer and Shakespeare. I didn't have any of the other options.
I had Chaucer, but it was mixed into a medieval class, so we got Chaucer, and we mainly did his Canterbury Tales. But I knew I should have taken a Shakespeare class, but Hemingway just sounded interesting. I also hated the man, and I was like, maybe I'll learn something from it. And I did. Yeah. I ended up learning that I love him as a writer.
As a person, questionable.
But like still like there's like things about him as a person that I'm like, wow, that was really cool he did that. And also like, wow, he really sucks.
Yeah.
Like, so it's interesting. But yeah, that was I don't know much about I've done The Tempest and Hamlet and Macbeth. I've done Othello, but a long time ago, so I don't remember a dang thing.
Othello, talking about Jonathan Bailey and Wicked, if we want to pivot to him. If you go to the, is it the National Theater? It's the major theater
the Royal
in
Theatre.
London.
I don't know.
And it's like very prestigious. He was Cicero in Othello. So you've got Othello's like the general. Cicero was like the second-hand man.
Okay.
And like he was supposed to be made out to be the villain, but it wasn't actually the villain. And he's kind of like a womanizer too. He like is flirting with all these girls.
Yeah.
So having Jonathan Bailey play him was very fit.
Interesting. So yeah, I just don't know a ton about Shakespeare, but it was a good reading year for Cal. I don't remember anything. I don't even remember papers I've written. Like someone was like, what did you write your capstone on? And I was like, shoot, like I spent like 3 months working on that and I loved the topic and I still couldn't tell you what it was about. I think those things are just like so stressful for me that when I'm out of it, I just don't think about it. Like, but the thing is I want to publish my capstone. So it's like, I'm going to have to go back to it eventually. But there's just like, I don't know. That's just kind of how it goes. But we want to know what your guys' favorite books were. Yeah. Those were Akatar and Christmas Carol, and I didn't really enjoy like one of my folktale books. Right. But
what are your goals for 2025?
I have no idea. Like everyone's like, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I'm like, a whole lot of things I'm thinking about, but I don't know what I'm actually going to do.
If you just narrow it just to books.
If it's just books.
Just books, nothing else.
I honestly would love to read 100 books this next year.
Okay.
Like massive goal. But I would love to because I have a giant to be read list because of school and like having limited time to like I don't know, when I'm reading for classes all the time, a lot of times I escape into books I love. So it's like not new for me. I'm just rereading things because I love them. Yeah. So I want to actually tackle my to be read list, which is full of, there's actually a few nonfictions in there. And there's a lot of more like theoretical books that professors have recommended to me that I am curious about. And then there's a lot of fiction stories. I do want to try The Assassin's Blade. Is that what it's called?
The first one is The Assassin's Apprentice.
It's
like the first one.
That sounds intriguing to me. And then like I just have all these like series I just want to try. And then like break it up with like the books I've been recommended that are more like standalone. There's a few contemporary books that I want to read. Like I really want to read Zadie Smith's White Teeth.
Oh yeah.
Because like I've been told about that, and because like I don't know, you get in these conversations where like I don't know, like music, like will it ever be as good as like Brahms or Beethoven, or like writing, will you ever get like these classic writers again? And in contemporary times, people have talked about Zadie Smith and like the guy that wrote Shuggie Bain, I forgot his name. But these like authors that will become classics, and so I want to try that to see if I'm reading it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be a classic, or I'm not sure. So there's kind of those books, but I do want to try reading 100 books this next year. I want to read a lot more, but I also love the podcast because it allows you to talk about it and like mull over the stuff you read instead of just kind of like, I don't know, reading to read. Because if you read books like Catcher in the Rye or like more fantasy books, like I feel like they're enhanced when you can talk about them or listen to people talk about it.
Yeah, so, I agree. I like it. Me, 100 books is a lot. I was going for like 60.
I know. I don't know. It like changes every year. Sometimes I can read 70 books. Other times I've like read maybe 20.
I've never broken 50 before. I've never read more than 50 books a year. So I really want to get to 60 next year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like specific books or authors I want to read. My goal is I really want to find an author who I'm like, this is going to become a classic. Because I feel like I've read quite a bit of contemporary. Like I read, like Sally Rooney is someone people say is going to become like a classic.
Okay.
I didn't
What stuff
love
has
her
Sally
stuff.
Rooney written?
She wrote Normal People. There's a TV show made about it too. She just came out with a new book.
Interesting.
But she's written a ton of stuff and she's very popular. So people are like, oh, she's going to become like a modern classic. I didn't really like her. I felt like it was very surface level. I don't know. I didn't think it was
All that classic.
all that. Which is, I feel bad saying this because people love Sally Rooney.
No, I think you should be able to feel like you could say what you think, though.
Yeah. Or like Brandon Sanderson is another one. People are like, oh, he's going to become like a Tolkien.
He's not a Tolkien. I'm sorry. That sounds horrible. I think he's incredible, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's a Tolkien.
Yeah, like there's all of these contemporary authors out there that, I don't know, I just want to find someone who I feel like, this sounds so like big-headed.
Yeah.
I feel like such a hater, but I don't know. My main goal is just to find an author I'm like, yes, this is like classic.
Who writes today and writes well and... Oh,
I feel like Robin Hobb got really close. I don't think she's going to be... I don't think she's like Tolkien in any way, but I think she got pretty close in my opinion.
okay.
But still not quite there. 60 books, and then my goal
Yours is probably way more chewable. Maybe I should...
You know, go for it.
I don't know. I'll try.
Go for it.
I'm going to have to read a lot, though.
Yeah, and I actually am the opposite.
That's like more than 5 books in a month.
Yeah. Woo. And I have the opposite of you where you have this massive TBR of new books. I want to go back and reread things.
Yeah.
So my goal for 2025 is I want to go back and I want to reread all the Hunger Games, like all of the like really old stuff that people love and like still talk about. I want to go back and reread those, and then I want to curate a list of all of the banned books, like the most often banned books. I want to collect those and then read all of them, and then kind of figure out why they've been banned and like why I think they shouldn't be, because I think that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my 2 main goals.
I love that. I want you to help me with that list. Because like I'm also interested. There's a lot of books that I read that have been like... Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was a banned book at one point. And then like The Catcher in the Rye is always on the banned book list. Like, but I love that book. I really do. And so I'm curious, like, yeah, I'd love to read those with knowing like they're on a banned book list. I also think you should read banned books. Like you really should. I'm one of those people. I think someone that is more contemporary, but they're not that contemporary anymore because they're freaking old now. But it's like, I don't know. Tom Stoppard. Have you heard of him before? Okay. I don't know much about the man, so there's probably like some crazy stuff about him that I should be knowing about, but I don't. His name is I didn't know this till recently. He's Sir Tom Stoppard. He wrote a play called Arcadia.
Oh no, I've heard of Arcadia.
He is a freaking genius. I read that and think he's going to be a classic. So I think he's one of those people.
That was in the 90s?
Yeah, so I think
I like it. Not to discredit this answer, but I want something that's written like within the past like 5 years.
5 years?
I want to do very recent, like within the past 5 years. I want to find an author out there. Because, I mean, you can find tons of people.
I still think
like
that's contemporary, though.
Yeah.
Even if it's 80s.
True, but I want like now. Within the last like 5 years, I want to find somebody.
That's going to be hard, I think. I know you can do it, but that is going to be hard.
It is hard.
Because Zadie Smith, I think her book was in like earlier 2000s. So it's probably like 15 years ago, some of it.
Well, and then like Robin Hobb stuff, it was originally written in the early 90s. I think most of the stuff I find is early 90s. No, I want within the last like 5 years. That's been published.
That is... I think there's really cool like writing by people who do Substack stuff. Like they write shorts or things like that. Yeah. So I'm curious what you find.
I don't know. I want a novel. Sit down. Like this is up to par with Charles Dickens.
Ooh. That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they've got to be out there. Like good writers didn't not exist after the 1800s.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I do think it's interesting though, because like if you look at like how things have evolved within like, especially within the realm of reading, most people that were writing like the Romantics and some of the Victorians, they some of them had money so they could get a good education, so their writing was good. Was generally good. Yeah. And but then it got kind of diluted when everyone was reading. When everyone started reading and people were getting access to education, writing became like more popular. Yeah. And so then you would get like the really crappy stuff.
What do you call them? I think they were bodice rippers. What do you call them?
My gosh, yes. Bodice rippers, and you get like a bunch of like kind of crappy books because then all of a sudden everyone's writing. Yeah. So now these days I feel like most books aren't even that worth reading because like it's so diluted, saturated. Yeah. And so like at that time there was so many classics is because there wasn't very much competition. But that's fair. But I do think there are people out there, like there's like some comment on like people like Einstein and people just with really incredible minds and why they're so few, and people were just like, I don't know if it's just that they're so few, I just think it's not many people get the opportunity because even if they're like poor, like Charles Dickens and was able to rise above that, there's a lot of people that are like in workhouses or in sweatshops or died prematurely. Like there's just like so many people that I think the potential exists. There's just some people that are in places where like it's very hard to achieve that. So I don't know, just a thought, but those are great goals. I think I also like from reading so much, I do have writing goals. Like I want to write more.
Me too.
I want to be one of those people that can produce as much as I consume reading. Like I want to produce more ideas or build off the ideas that I think are important. So I do want to try that too.
We should each write a short novel.
Mine's gonna suck.
You know, that's okay. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, but I can't. Charles Dickens started off with a banger already. Like, how the heck, like you know how people are like, just look at filmmakers' first films or look at writers' first, like, stories. They're crap. They're not meant to be, like, read by everybody. But I'm like, not everybody.
I know. I just watched,
like, some people just were born to do this.
Shoot, who directed Little Woman? Greta Gerwig. I watched Lady Bird. Yeah. Her first directed film. And that one was still really good.
Oh, yeah. Lady Bird, actually, a lot of people like Lady Bird more than they like Barbie.
I could see that. It kind of just depends on what you're going for. If I
or your style.
What style. If I just want to be entertained, I'll watch Barbie. But if I want something a little bit more, I'd probably watch Lady Bird.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people have said. I think they also liked Lady Bird because it was a little bit more subtle about certain things. And Barbie was kind of more upfront about it. Yeah. And so some people didn't like that. And I was like, oh, interesting. I love Barbie though.
I love Barbie.
Barbie, the first time I was like, I don't know how I feel. And then I watched it again and I was like, I'm obsessed.
I think I've cried every time I've watched it.
Oh yeah. And sometimes the second time I watched it, I cried at a different part too. I was like, oh, it was like
what part you cry at?
Okay, spoilers for Barbie.
Barbie spoilers.
The part when she's on the bench with the lady. And she was like,
yeah, you're beautiful.
And she's like, I know. I was like, oh my gosh. That was so
almost got cut from the film.
Yes, and Greta Gerwig was like, nah, this is the whole reason I made the film. And that happens a lot. Directors will be told to cut a scene and they're like, this is the scene that makes the movie. Like, there's another film that's like that. I think it's called Fantastic Mr. Fox with Wes Anderson. There's like scenes that directors have that the people are like if you just don't get it, you won't get it. Like, if you're just like, that doesn't make sense to me, you'll never get it. Yeah. But a lot of times that's why the director made the film. So anyways, I just feel like it's hard to, I don't know, you look at what they first created and then it makes you feel better, but you can't be a Greta Gerwig or Charles Dickens. I just think it's important to write because I read this recently, especially in conversation to like AI and all of that. Which I do think AI is such a fantastic tool, but it's not meant to be an art.
No, can't create art.
We need to still critically think, and we still need to think. Yeah. Just in general. And so I just wanted to share like a thought on just our goals of this year of reading and all of that. But just like, I think when it comes down to reading and being entertained, like you have to figure out why you read for you. But I do think it's important to have I don't know, like an aspect of learning and growing. And I think reading is a way that I feel like we grow as people, and I love gathering together and talking about it, even if it's like through a podcast, like we can gather people together to talk about books that we've enjoyed. And so we're excited to hopefully like have more people join us.
Yeah.
Not just because we're like, we need followers. No, it's because we just want peers to talk about
We
stuff.
want to find like our little community out there who like similar books.
Yeah. And so I like recently was talking about this in one of our classes because a professor was like, what do I do with like the students that obviously just use ChatGPT and things like that? And we don't need to get into that because I feel like that's a whole can of worms in themselves. But there was something interesting that he had said. So this is kind of like what he says with regards to writing. And I don't even know who Paul Graham is. So you guys probably do. It was something that my husband, he reads Paul Graham's, some of his stuff. And he just like posts like his thoughts kind of a thing and like literary formatting. Like he's pretty smart about how he approaches his subjects. But he says like there was probably a time where like you could pay someone to write for you or like just plagiarize. But he's like, not anymore. AI has blown this world open. Almost all pressure to write has dissipated. You can have AI do it for you, both in school and at work. The result will be a world divided into writes and write-nots. There will still be some people who can write. Some of us like it. But the middle ground between those who are good at writing and those who can't write at all will disappear. Instead of good writers, okay writers, and people who can't write, there will just be good writers and people who can't write. Is that so bad? Isn't it common for skills to disappear when technology makes them obsolete? There aren't many blacksmiths left, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. Yes, it is bad, though. The reason is something I mentioned earlier. Writing is thinking. In fact, there's a kind of thinking that can only be done by writing. You can't make this point better than someone named Leslie Lamport had once said. If you're thinking about writing, you only think you're thinking.
Yeah.
So a world divided into rights and write-nots is more dangerous than it sounds. It will be a world of thinks and think-nots. I know which half I want to be in, and I bet you do too.
That's a total 1984 thing.
Yes. It really is. And
like the idea of like not thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. And I think that's important as like the relationship between like readership and authors. Like I think as readers, I think we should be, I think when you figure out what you love to do about reading, like if it's just for entertaining and escaping, I think that's so fine. Like that's so great. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
But I also think like reading is a way to do more and learn more and think and learn how to think, and writing is a way to express that thinking. And so I think for me, this new year with reading, I want to make sure I'm writing too.
Yeah.
And so, because I do feel like those things kind of work in tandem. But not as like, this isn't like a career choice. Like this is just something for me personally, like as a goal. So we want to hear what your goals are. What are your guys' book goals for this new year? How do you want to grow? How do you want to learn? Yeah.
I love it. Okay, awesome. So then just to segue into podcast goals, we kind of already talked about, you kind of already touched on the like, why should we read?
Yeah.
I kind of want to ask the question though, we have a little document. Lauren added some good notes. I like the question, how does one start reading?
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. We have both gotten a little, like feedback before of our first episode. We talked about like our favorite books.
Like the books that made us.
The books that made us. But I also, it's a good thing to remember we have both been reading our entire lives.
Yeah.
Reading is our personality.
Yeah. like it wasn't like I wasn't a reader and then
I started reading Charles Dickens, right?
Yeah. Ooh, good luck finding those people. Ooh.
Or like I just like sat down one day and was like, I'm gonna read, I'm trying to think of some like crazy author, the Aeneid or the Iliad
or like
the Odyssey,
Dostoevsky stuff.
Yeah, like all of the like really crazy stuff that's really hard to read.
Yeah.
So I think that like, how does one start reading? If I were to give you like a medical prescription, this is what I think you should do. I don't think it's a bad thing if you start with the stuff that we have been notorious for calling bad or like lesser works. I hate saying lesser works. I don't think they're lesser, but
and
I don't think
kind
they're as great.
Subjective. There's things that are just badly written.
Yeah.
But
also like if you want to get into reading, but it's hard to read all the stuff that we've been talking about, and you want to start with just like a simple contemporary romance that's got 100 pages and it'll take you an hour to read.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Go for it. So I think you just need to start with what is
your taste.
You can accomplish, but then it is very important to then open your world and try other things. But I don't think it's bad if you start wherever you're at.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this too, because I think with reading, especially with the podcast we're doing, it's kind of hard to do because I don't know if this is a fair comment, but I think that podcasts are very saturated with people that are very high thinkers. So it's very intellectual books that they're reading, very philosophical, very theological. And then there's just beginners. Yeah. So there's not very middle ground stuff that we're kind of doing. So I feel like we're trying to teeter both higher as in like abstract. Yeah. So it's not like above anything. Yeah. Honestly, I hope we never become snobby.
I know. I feel like we have
we embarrass ourselves too much on this podcast to be snobby. We say the wrong things. If our professor, I actually think about this a lot. My professors probably will never listen to this, but if they do, I'm like, oh, I'm so curious if they're like, that you didn't say that right, or that word didn't make any sense. That's not a word. Like, podcasts are hard because you're spontaneously talking. Yeah. It's not like we don't really do scripts, really.
We have a topic.
We have topics and then we just go. But
yeah, we research history. Yeah,
but and we usually don't like to pull out facts out of thin air. Yeah. But I don't know if this is a fair comment, but I do think what we're doing is hard because we're trying to teeter both people that want to talk more about academic conversations for books versus like entertainment and like, oh, that part was crazy, you know? So we're trying to toggle both of those because we want this to be really made for people that enjoy reading and being a part of a book club. And it doesn't mean you follow the book of every month, but that like you find something that you enjoy, or maybe start your own book club. But I do think how to start reading can be hard, especially when you're listening to two hosts who've read their whole lives and you compare yourselves to us. Because I feel like if I was someone that doesn't really read, I'd feel kind of ashamed to listen because I'm like, I don't know anything and I feel kind of dumb. Don't feel that way.
No. We're a lot of, like, especially our non-spoiler episodes where we're giving you a lot of information. If you didn't know any of that, that's kind of the point. Yeah. Is we're introducing a book that, like A Christmas Carol, even though it's written by Charles Dickens, I do think anyone on their reading journey could just start reading that. Yeah. But if you do sit down and you're like, I'm still not quite there yet, that's fine. Yeah. That, like, we're here to, like, help you introduce to things and open your world a little bit more than just the romance or the really popular stuff.
Yeah. And then it comes back to, why do you want to read? Yeah. Like, do you want to read? I could give you lots of reasons why you should read. But it's just because I do think reading is just so cool and I love it. But also hiking is great and watching movies is great. Yeah. So this is for, I guess, obviously like an audience that is wanting to start to read. And so learning how to do that I think is important. And that's just like a few prescriptions you can use to I don't know, figure that journey out. Yeah,
and if I get on my own little soapbox a little bit, I do think, I think reading for escapism is a great way to read. I do that all the time. Sometimes I just want to go to like a cool world.
And there's no problem with that. Like you're reading a bunch of stuff and you're just like, I just need to escape. Yeah. And that's fair.
But I do think you're doing literature and reading and art a disservice if that's all you're doing. Yeah. I do think you're not utilizing this amazing art to its fullest potential. There's so much more to reading than just escapism. There's learning and growing and like traveling the world. Like I honestly feel like I've gone to all these different countries even though I've never been there. Because I've read books from those countries. And so like my understanding of how the world works is expanding.
Who lived there. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm just not like naive about what's going on. Or I'm not even like stuck in my own little American bubble. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Like you've got different cultures that are coming at different angles where it's like, well, let's look at this collectively. Well, let's look at this individualistically. Like things like that. Yeah. Interesting.
So I think like escapism is a good thing. I think it's like a great way to read. But if
it's not the only way. Yeah.
Then I do think that is you're doing
you're
the
missing
art
out.
to discern. You're missing out. Yeah. This is like, I'm encouraging you to please.
Yeah, be more, I guess, like open-minded because
Yeah.
it's changed our lives.
Yeah.
Because before, that's all I would read for.
Same.
Like I had already talked about this, but Harry Potter is the only thing I read for most of my life up until like I was in high school, like about to start high school. I only read Harry Potter and I didn't want to read anything else. I was like, there's nothing going to be as good as this. Because I was reading it purely for escapism and like also like, I don't know, Harry Potter taught me about what friendship could look like.
Yeah.
And then my friends were like, well, how about you try Percy Jackson? And I was like, okay.
Okay.
Loved Percy Jackson. Got hooked on that. And then slowly, like, then I got introduced to Throne of Glass. And like, so I really was like indoctrinated into fantasy and escapism. That is how I read for half my life.
Yeah.
And then I went to school, and school really, I don't know, a university should give you a universal education, and so it should expose you to different ideas, different ways to approach things, and it changed how I approach reading. I approach reading with a pencil all the time now.
Same.
Like, I used to not do that. Like, some people did. I didn't until I was in college, and it's changed my life. Like, I'm so much more engaged, and it's just made me realize, like, learning is such a fulfilling part of growing, and we're constantly growing. And, like, I know what you kind of say, like, you're a grown-up, but you're still growing up. Like, you're still growing up, and you're still learning. And I think reading and having a pencil or a pen with you really just helps. Like, I even do it to like fantasy books that you don't really need to take notes on, but you do because I just think it's interesting. No, like I just really hope that this is a space where we can open your mind to reading. And if you haven't started reading, don't feel ashamed. I know it's hard to just say, don't feel this, but we don't want you to feel that. That's not what we're going for, because it's really about, I don't know, learning to love reading.
Learning to love reading. And so many people love so many different types of genres.
Yeah.
Like one of the goals we have for the podcast is we want to branch out into genres we don't normally read.
Yes.
Like nonfiction.
Yeah. And we know people that hate it, and there's people who only read nonfiction.
Yeah. And I am
And they're not just grandmas and grandpas.
True.
That was like, that sounded ageism in there. It's really not, but I've just noticed people in my life who tend to read nonfiction are like
older.
My dad.
Yeah, my dad.
and my grandma, and I think it's really cool that they do it. I'm not judging. I'm actually like, wow, I need to branch out.
Yeah. So we want to branch out into other like genres that we don't normally read and discover for ourselves too. I think I honestly have only ever read a handful of nonfiction.
Yes.
And they're probably mostly like memoirs.
Yeah. And like the ones I usually want to read are just like, oh, like this person made an autobiography and I kind of want to listen to them. Like The Third Gilmore.
Oh, I want to read
by Kelly Bishop. I am curious about that because I love Gilmore Girls. But also The Boy Who Lived by, what's his name? The boy that was the stunt double for Harry Potter. There's like these nonfictions that I'm personally interested in. And so I'm like, okay, like maybe if you're trying to learn to love nonfiction, you can approach it with us because we don't know how to do it. And so maybe we start with reading things that by people that we like as we get into. Because like my husband reads history books and I'm not that person.
No.
He reads about Rome and...
Have I ever read a history book before? I don't know if I have.
I think Anne Frank counts.
Oh yeah, Anne Frank counts.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's one I think all kids are introduced to.
Yeah. I read that in middle school.
Yeah. So there's like those ones, which are super vital, I think. But continuing on to read things like that, we want to learn, and you can learn with us because that is something new for us in nonfiction and some other genres that we could be doing.
If you guys have any genres that we haven't really touched on yet that you want us to read, let us know. There's like a whole slew of books out there. Some we've never even heard of before. So we also, along with you guys, want to start to learn to love new books.
Yeah. And I think too, with our podcast, for our goals, we want to engage you more, like with us in our like conversations. And so we might maybe like someday we'll like put out like a Google survey or something just to like prompt people to send stuff to us, and it can be anonymous. So we know like maybe you want to hear from other people, and we can like bring people on that didn't like reading and learn to love reading. Like my sister-in-law, she never read, which is fine. Like she just wasn't a reader. She was one of those outdoors people, which I love. Like, okay, I feel like I'm categorizing people too much here. I'm really not
into boxes.
We're not in boxes.
No.
We all love different things. Like, I know people that are outdoorsy and love reading, and everyone's a mix. But she was one of those people I had a hard time talking with because she didn't really watch movies. She didn't really read. I like playing outside, but that's all she would do. And so we just didn't have a ton of things to connect on. And then recently she started reading these historical dramas, and that's her thing. She realized, like, I love this genre, and I love how this lady writes it.
Like Kristen Hanna.
It's Kristen Hanna. And what's crazy about her is she was a lawyer for most of her life and then went into writing, and she's really good at it. So she
I like her stuff.
Loves her books. And she was like, I would love if the podcast could be like, hey, if you want more books like that, check out these other authors.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so we're going to be taking in what feedback we get from family, from friends, and just family, it seems, right now.
Right now? That's who it is.
That's who it is. But I do feel like they give really good feedback. And so maybe we can find ways to bridge those gaps. Like, I feel like when we did our sort of Kaigen episode, we gave really good... It was like a good book if you liked Avatar: The Last Airbender /
The Poppy War.
The Poppy War. So, and that wasn't us saying that. It was like a critic that had said that. But we could do that more in our podcast.
Yeah.
We could be like, if you like these kinds of books, try and look into these authors. Or we could bring on people to interview and talk about their reading experience. Or if they have knowledge about a book we're reading, we could bring them on. So those are some things we're playing with in our plans for this podcast to make it more engaging for you, because that's what this is really for us to yap and to also like yap with you. So
we just want more people to love to read, so here we are.
Yeah, here we are. There's no grand plan beyond that.
Yep.
And I think it'll stay like that forever, because this is just our passion project.
Yeah.
And like I think it's like a pit where we can put all the stuff we learned from school that we may not necessarily be applying into the work field that we're in. So
true. I know. I feel like right now there's a lot of people like BookTube, Book Talk, Bookstagram, and there's like this wide, very large community, but I do feel like they always follow the same trend of stuff. I want to go out of that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we're a little bit different than that.
Yeah.
We're gonna still read trending stuff.
yeah.
Like the like Fourth Wing, we're going to be reading Fourth Wing, and so the new book is coming out in January.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to do that then.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be a kickstart for most people. Like, then you don't have a cliffhanger. You're welcome.
Yeah. But so we still want to follow some of the trends, but we want to go out of it a little bit and like because some of the trending stuff is really good. Like a lot of stuff that I love is trending.
Yeah.
Like Sword of Kaigen was
a trending
book.
Yeah. I also think like we can be pretty broad because of the like opportunity to like go to school. And so I feel like we were pretty classical.
Yeah.
Like we had A Christmas Carol, Frankenstein,
Jane
Eyre. So those are pretty classic.
Yeah.
I feel like we gave you guys a good little...
We gave you like the beginning of the classics.
Yeah, and like some of the best classics, I think. And the most accessible ones, while we also like explored, I don't know, Harry Potter, which is a huge thing in the reading world. And so I think we mixed it with trendy, but also like important like classics we think are accessible. So this new year, we're going to try to branch more with like nonfiction and genres and maybe even things we've never read before together. And you can learn with us. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think we're just going to try to find a way to engage with you guys all more and I don't know, stay focused on our goal. Just learning to love to read, maybe being more consistent on social media.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll be a little bit more present. Like I have like ideas of things we can do to engage you all more, but it would be like, I honestly think it would be a dream to just all day just read and talk about it.
Right? And like that's our career.
Like, so if we could turn this podcast into that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully. We'll see.
We have big plans. We have big plans for something that may never happen, but we like to dream.
If you don't try, then it'll never happen.
Yeah. So that's kind of what this is. And I also love it because it's kind of an archive for us because we were college students and started this. And so it'll be fun to be old and still yapping about this kind of stuff.
I know. Well, Lauren and her husband will have like 5 kids running around.
Yeah, maybe, but they're all going to be yapping too about books. Just kidding. We'll see, but we're so excited. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this bonus episode. we're grateful for you guys.
Yeah, love you all.
Okay,
Thanks for listening. Bye.